ECSI fans, you want to revolutionize your sports investing habits? Allow me to tell you about WagerWire. WagerWire is an app that helps you become a superior bettor by allowing you to sync all your sports books and track all your bets in one place. See your current action, your betting history, and stats. You could also sign up for sports books and collect bonus offers. Follow them at WagerWire on X, as it's the best account on the platform. Head to App Store or Play Store now and search WagerWire and download.
Check this out, we got a great show coming your way.
From the ECSI Sports Studios, the #1 sports information program in America, the Breakfast Bankroll, with your host, the sports broker, Jeff Dawson.
Good morning, sports fans from all around the globe, and I don't see myself here. It looks like we have camera issues here. Oh, what a way to start the day. Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors. The Breakfast Bankroll with Scotty Webb. A lot to talk about today. We got a nice signing for my Red Sox and Ranger Suarez. Jim Harbaugh goes to the New York Giants. Got a couple football games to break down today, tomorrow, maybe Saturday. Of course, shout out to our proud sponsors and partnerships. It's WagerWire. Head on over to Google Play, download the app. It is free. And of course, AtlantaSteaksAndSeafood.com. Steak, seafood, chops, appetizers, wine. Terry does it all. So come on board to AtlantaSteaksAndSeafood.com. I'm kind of stuck here, and I'm going to bring Scotty on here for a second and see if we can figure this out. So, what's up, champ?
Hey, man. It's like you're a ghost today. I mean, I hear you. I'm envisioning you over there with, I don't know, some sort of heavy coat on because it's cold or something. But you know, whatever. I'm here. It's all good. I'll be sexy for both of us. How about that?
Good. I'm going to try to maneuver something here. I don't understand what's going on. Camera looks good. Everything looks good. Hold on one second. I'm going to try something here. If I did that for a second. See, that goes.
Something's better.
Yeah, that goes to my Logicam.
Yeah, I can see you.
Which is over here. Let me see something here. Now, if I go back to the camera. There we go.
Hey, I see you now. You're not even wearing a sweatshirt, for God's sakes.
45 degrees. It's actually nice out. A lot to talk about. You know, I was out yesterday doing some stuff. I came back and I caught it first on social media. Shocked, dumbfounded, just because you and I, everyone I've talked to, we never once brought up the name Ranger Suarez. Now, the funny thing for the Red Sox is, again, egg on their face or whatever, stern, whatever the word is you were looking for, on the Bregman deal. But they made it clear they had a plan B and C, and that was to add a number 2. Now, earlier in the free agency, when they added Sonny Gray, it was like, I respect Sonny Gray, but he wasn't that 2 that moved the needle. Ranger Suarez moves the needle. Look at his playoff numbers. They're off the charts. And someone posted yesterday his ERA at Fenway Park is 0.00. So I assume he had one start and did very well. But what really this sets up for the Red Sox, obviously, is the best 1-2 lefty punch in the game with Crochet and Suarez. But they have those two now for 5 or 6 years. That's a hell of a way to wake up every season and say, hey, we got a 1-2 punch here of Crochet and Suarez. And what it's really done now, Scotty, is when you go down the potential starting five, Crochet, Suarez, Gray, Bello, Oviedo that they got from Pittsburgh. As you see, I didn't mention Early, Tolley, Crawford, and Sandoval. So now they can go back to Arizona and says, hey, I know you took Marte off the table, but we got an extra outfielder. We got a potential extra first baseman. We got a ready-to-go Bayo. We have some youth here. Can we stoke the fire there?
Well, I thought it was an interesting move for a couple of reasons. War, projected war and different things now. They grade as number one in baseball with starting pitchers. So that's not a bad sign. That's a good thing. If you go out there and you can pitch every day, that keeps you in games. So what I've been hearing a lot is I don't know that they're going to deal with Ketel Marte. It sounds to me like they're way more interested in dealing with third base. And I was surprised. You and I had the conversation before. We talked about Eugenio Suarez and just sign him and put him on the team. Well, it looks to me like they're dealing with Isaac Paredes, and that's kind of the angle. Shouldn't say angle. That's the choice that they're making, and how they want to go, and what does Houston want to give him up? He used to play here in the Rays, so I'm familiar with him and seen him and stuff, and he's moved around just a little bit since then, and I thought he was a major force for Houston last year until he got hurt. And when he got hurt, then that team sort of struggled because they needed some bats because obviously whatever his name Alvarez was hurt, so they needed some punch, and Isaac Paredes provided that. So I don't think that would be a problem for Boston either. And at this point, that's the only thing holding them back. I heard the term athletic, and these former Major League Baseball players are describing teams in batting orders and structures as athletic or not athletic. And I kind of like that term because that describes how baseball is played today. You need athletes that can run. You need athletes that have speed, but also have power and so forth. And when you start looking at where the Red Sox are and different things, they're more athletic. They made the point. I was listening to some of the stuff. They made the point that they're not necessarily better because they didn't sign Bregman, especially on the offensive side. Their lineup's not better because they don't have them. But if you manipulate, do this, do that, make it more interchangeable, do a lot of other things, it's more athletic. And the other comment that was made was, Bregman being gone is he was a defensive wonder for them. So you lose some of that. So and then you bring all these pitchers in, and they're going to want ground balls and guys to get outs and stuff. So I'm not sure how it's all going to play out in Boston, but I will say they have the pieces to go do whatever they want. If they were trying to sell me on the guy in Donovan in St. Louis that they wanted, I'm like whatever. So. I don't like that move, but at the same time, whatever, it's a move. So, and he's a bat and he's an athletic guy, but at the same time, all of that, you think about what has always been there for them, right? That they had Big Poppy there, right? They had Devers there. They had big RBI, big home run guys. They, they don't have much of that. I mean, you can't tell me stories that guy. So I don't know who fills that role, but they're going to have an athletic looking team. I mean, they're going to have guys that do stuff. So the pitching is what they're going with, and their pitching now matches up to anybody. Their pitching matches up to Toronto and all the other teams that are out there, and the Yankees are sitting there going, we need to do stuff to hold over until Garrett Cole's ready to go, and I guess Rodon's not going to be ready for the first 2 weeks or something, so they will go sign David Weathers, and they do some other stuff, and they need to just piecemeal stuff together till those guys come, and I don't even know if those guys are going to be what they used to be. So I don't think Rodon's going to be an issue, but Garrett Cole's coming off major issues. So who knows what they're going to look like? And they don't have Bellinger on that team, so their bat's short. So I don't look. We're still not done. There's still plenty of guys you can go get. There's still plenty of trades you can make. Everybody's talking about Freddie Peralta and all kinds of stuff, and I guess the rumor mill is anyway that Kyle Tucker is going to make his decision today. So we'll see what happens with that. I think the front runner. I mean, my opinion, just based off of what I hear, front runner is Toronto as far as I'm concerned. I think that's where he goes. But we'll see what happens and how it all plays out. But congratulations to the Red Sox. I mean, they got pitchers, and they got pitchers so much that the guys can fall apart and they throw another guy in there. So it's all good for and you need that kind of stuff to a degree, but they also become tradable assets. The young guys are blocked now, so they got to figure out what they're going to do with some of these guys.
No, and again, getting back to Ketel Marte, again, listen, this is not Robbie Alomar in his prime. This is, some of the other solid second base in this regard, because he's got issues, and I'm not here to belittle Ketel Marte, but he has, I don't want to say some of the diva qualities, but he does have issues, and issues in the clubhouse, and that was the sticking point. What happened at Devers? He became a malcontent. He became that cancer, and you can't play as a former coach, and you're a former a player. You can't have cancers in the locker room. I always described this when I was coaching. There was one cell of cancer. Okay, and then what that cancer does is he tries to gravitate and bring more people to his side. And so your clubhouse of 24 now is 23 and one piece of cancer. Well, next thing you know, he's got another guy on his side, then there's another guy on his side, and then that starts spreading the cancer. And you have to make a big time decision here. Maybe a change of scenery, hey, from West Coast to East Coast. Look at the Green Monster. Look at the full park every day, yada, yada, yada. Does the light bulb finally go on? That's number one. Number two, the easiest plug and play is, a 2-year deal, 15 to 20 per, and adding Suarez, because you're adding, quote unquote, 49 homers to the lineup. Now, we're not saying he's going to hit 49 homers, but that's an easy plug and play there. So there, and then the Donovan kid from, listen, hey, we took Contreras, you traded Arenado. I don't want sloppy seconds and thirds anymore. We're okay with moving on there. And lastly, Scotty, and I think they're real sticking to this point, is they believe in the kids. And so the fact of the matter is, if they left it as is, that opens up Campbell. Maybe we give him another bite at the apple at second base. That opens up Meyer at third base. That allows them to leave spring training and come to the bigs and start there. Where for me, I want a veteran, because as you said, is when you're rolling out Crochet, you're rolling out Gray, you're rolling out Suarez. If these guys are putting the ball in play and you turn out to be defensively the bad news bears, forget about it.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens. I think they obviously have the opportunity with the pitching to be competitive in every game, and that's what you want. And the I think if they leave it as is, they're going to be offensively deficient. That's just what it's going to be. So if they're offensively deficient, they're going to play similar games like what the Rays do. So the question becomes: is their pitching good enough to beat the big offensive teams that play in the AL East and in the American League? And we'll see. But I think they're set up to make some more moves, to bring some bats in there. And I don't know that they want to spend any more money because they're already at the second tier over the luxury tax type stuff already. So I think making trades or moving people and doing different things would be how they would want to handle that, so that you're trading money instead of just buying more money. And I think I don't know if Isaac Paredes is that guy. That's he's not a big home run guy. He's like a 20 home run guy type of guy. But he's been hurt a lot and he wasn't a starter for a long time. So I don't know, maybe he's that guy. They see him as that, maybe, I don't know. So anyway, I guess that's the way I see it. I see it as they're a bat or two from being, the best team in the American League because they got the best pitching and now they just need some support on the offensive side and see what happens. But I don't know what they're going to do and how they're going to go do it. They have the pieces to move. It's a matter of whether they want to do it or how much they get for them. And I guess where they see their deficiencies and at what positions, sometimes they look at it and go, well, I want this kid to play, or I think we can platoon it and get this done and be a productive thing or whatever. And you always say, Breslow, I guess, you always say he's a sabermetric guy. So I don't know, maybe he's looking at some of that stuff and thinking that they can get through. But, just looking at like pitching, if you're doing pitching, Red Sox 22.4 WAR, Dodgers 21.9, and then you go to the bats, Yankees are 29.8 right now, and you go, where's the Red Sox? The Red Sox are 21.9, but Jeff, 21.9 puts them ahead of Tigers, Rays, Reds, White Sox, Pirates, Marlins, Nationals, Angels, Rockies, and that's it. They're towards the bottom. So that tells me that they're one-sided as a team. But if you want to be one-sided as a team, it's really good to be one-sided as pitchers. I guarantee you that. And it's not like they're dead last in batting. So I sit there and just think, but they have the pieces to address that if that's what they want to do, and become more offensive and supportive to some of those other guys that are getting on base and stuff. So anyway, I like it. Don't get me wrong. I like what they've done. I think it makes them very competitive to an everyday go run out there and go, okay, well, we might win this game if we only score 4 runs or 3 runs or whatever, because our pitchers are that good. But on the other hand, if the other team scores 5, I don't know if they can score 5. I'm, just saying, because you've got things that aren't the same. They're not the same offensively as they were a year ago.
We'll change gears here. Harbaugh to the Giants. Listen, Harbaugh had his pick of the litter. It would be interesting if the Bills would have lost last weekend. Would they have moved on from McDermott? The funny, well, let him go coach the Steelers. I guess it was really between the Giants and Atlanta. And comically, if I'm looking at Atlanta and history, listen, is Penix the future? I don't know if he is. I know Bijan is. And when healthy, Drake London. I don't think Pitts will be there. And you look at the Giants side of the fact, Jackson Dart, is he the quarterback? Cam Scatterboo coming off an injury, Malik Neighbors, and then on the defensive side, which Harbaugh loves, he's got some youth and some more youth where he could really put his stamp of approval. So the first domino has fell. As for seasoned veterans, McCarthy sat a year out, of course, and then also Stefanski. I always want to screw that one up. The veteran moves, but thoughts on Harbaugh to the Giants, Scott?
I think I don't know how to feel about it, other than I'm too minded when it comes to that. I think the Giants are a franchise that has history and I think more stability per se than what Atlanta does or some of those other teams that you would go talk to. So I like that. I think you could really get involved in Giants Eagles kind of stuff. Giants Redskins kind of stuff again. Redskins Giants Cowboys. Stuff like that. So I think that's all classic for what he would want to be involved in. So I think those are kind of cool things. What my understanding is that he said, look, you're going to pay me $20 million a year, and then here's my staff, and you're going to pay them this. And when we come in, we're going to do things, blah, 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 blah. Well, that's all well and good, but you can't just go do that. Meaning that you can't just go transition teams in certain time frames. So I don't know if he's got the right quarterback. I don't know if he's got the right systems. I don't know. So, but it doesn't surprise me that of the teams that were available to go run, he would choose a team like that because ultimately, that's an old school, been around the block, kind of like what he left, and sit there and go, maybe we can make it. I stood here for 15 more years and have some stability and do different things. And, we sell out, MetLife Stadium. So I think that's interesting. It doesn't surprise me in any way. I think some of these things that will be surprising come out of, we might not recognize some of these names that actually get interviews, A, and then B, might not recognize some of the jobs. Like I heard him talking about Pittsburgh and, these defensive coordinators and guys that are less than 30 years old and less than 35 years old getting talked to about running these teams. That's their history. And then they sit there and run them for 20 years. So I don't know what the right answers are. And I don't know what the relationships look like with head coaches and general managers. I know what they look like in Major League Baseball, and if you're an on-field manager in Major League Baseball, you don't have say-so in a lot of stuff. The general manager runs that team. You're just the orchestrator of the pieces. And if that's the way it is in the NFL, which I don't think it is, I think there's a lot more coordination there. I think there's a lot more coordination there. I'm not sure how easy John Harbaugh is to work with, and I'm not sure who the general manager is in New York. I mean, obviously you can look it up or do whatever, but I don't know what those relationships look like. Certainly they've got to have good ones to handle that kind of thing and to turn a program around. It's like that's what's going on like with the Raiders. They don't have relationships between those people or stuff would get done. They're listening to 10% older than Tom Brady to help fix their problems and stuff. So it's hard to really gather who's in charge and what's going on. And then the expectation level. I mean, is Cam Scatterboo the answer to running back at their thing? I don't know. He's not Mike Allstott, I guarantee you that. But I will say, what about Jackson Dart? Well, Jackson Dart's, what's Jackson Dart? So I get it. You got Neighbors. I think he's a good wide receiver. I think they have some pretty good defensive pieces. They're missing a lot of stuff, and they're going to have to go through some drafts and trades, and maybe you have veteran players that want to go play for John Harbaugh instead of who was there before and stuff like that. I don't know. So can they be competitive? Well, the Commanders weren't very competitive, and they kind of fell down. I don't know what the Cowboys are, but they're always a 500-ish kind of team. So they can be competitive with those teams kind of right away, I suppose. They still got to go. You still got to go challenge the Eagles, and the Eagles did get rid of their offensive coordinator, so hopefully they can fix all the stupid shit they got going on, and fix that problem. That they got all the players, so we'll see what that looks like as they go into the future and where that goes. But look at these teams that made the playoffs this year. Like New England, you put a guy in charge and set the tone and give them a little bit to work with, and all of a sudden you're good. But I don't think Jack Stark straight may. So it is what it is.
I answered a few questions, and for a Giant fan, why is the GM still retained? And I want to use the Patriots scenario last year. They bring in Mike Vrabel. He puts his staff together. Bob Kraft made sure Josh McDaniel was a part of the OC and the staff there. But Elliott Wolf stayed on as assistant GM. And then they added another piece. Why is the Giants GM stayed? Because it's too late to take your GM out of the equation and that whole staff, because in March is the combines and in April is the draft. You don't have enough time to all of a sudden put together this staff to get ready for the combines and the draft. So what the Patriots did was, here, Elliott, keep doing what you're doing, but do it in the corner. Okay, we have another guy as well, and we're going to work together. Now, I'm not saying the GM won't be let go after the draft or sometime during the summer, but my point is, because of it's January 15th, and before you know it, Super Bowl's over on February 8th or 9th, whatever the date is, and a month later we're talking Indianapolis and combines, and then in April we're talking draft, Scotty.
Yeah, we're talking about the kids running around in their underwear and how fast they run and how high they jump and stuff like that. So I get all that, and I agree with that. I mean, it's change is change, and timing of things create circumstances that you have to deal with, and if you don't have a plan on structure and development and growth as an organization and how you're going to deal with stuff like that, it's a problem. So we'll just see and how it goes for them. What the Mara family's owned that organization for I don't know how long. So I'm going to guess they're going to stay owners of that, and that provides stability. So they don't have to worry about certain things like that. But at some point, you got to win, and they haven't done that in that town for a while. So see how it all plays out. I think ultimately it could be good. I think ultimately it could be an overpay. That's just my thought. I like movers and shakers and things that turn things around and jump things up, and and see where they go from there. That's like the guy that I forget what his name is now, but the guy with the glasses that ran down and was the head coach in Miami for the last few years, was offensive wizard and all that stuff. McDaniel, right? Isn't that his name? Something like that. Anyway, he had an opportunity. He just didn't have structure. So somebody needed to help him. And that ownership group was like, we put you in charge, man. You go do it. And then the general manager like, let me get you some players. You go do it. It didn't work out. So I get all of those things. Well, John Harbaugh won't have that problem. He'll be an orchestrator of the team, and he'll have all of his ducks in a row as a businessman. But we'll see what they can produce and how it works, and what adaptive. Think about this. What adaptability do you have coming from an offense that was totally created around Lamar Jackson? well, you're going to have to totally change your philosophy. And I get it. It wasn't his philosophy. It was whoever brought him in. He was just saying, we need to build around this one player. Okay, well, that one player helped you 1 year, but he can't get you through Super Bowl or get you through playoff games and all that stuff as it goes down the road now. So I don't. And now he's got guys that don't play like that. It's a one-off kind of guy. So I don't. We'll see how it all plays out. He doesn't have Derrick Henry. Cam Scatterbo. He's got all this stuff, and I like Cam Scatterbo. Don't get me wrong, but there's a reason why Cam Scatterbo was drafted in the 6th round or whatever round he was drafted in. So I guess my point being is that there's a lot of work to be done, and I'm not expecting anything overnight, and I think if they can address defense. And get some half-assed good defense in there, it's like pitchers. They should be able to handle things. Like, look what the Houston Texans are doing until they drafted the quarterback. And the quarterback's not even that good. It almost cost them the game the last week. But the point being is their defense is so good, they scored 2 touchdowns because of their defense. And that was enough to win the damn game because they only gave up 6 points. And their defense scored 2 touchdowns.
Speaking of NFL, we can talk about the 2 games on Saturday. You and I can come back tomorrow, talk about the other 2, or we'll figure out if we're going to do something on Saturday. Currently, right now, San Francisco, Seattle kickoff 3 o'clock on Saturday. I'm sorry, eyes aren't working. 4:30 p.m. Saturday, Buffalo at Denver. Right now, Denver -1 with a 45.5. That opened up at 47 and a pick'em. Did see some Buffalo money early in that game. Now back to Denver there. Almost reminds me of last week with Buffalo and Jacksonville, where Buffalo did get to a -1, 1.5, and all the Jacksonville money came there. And then the nightcap at 8 p.m. San Fran at Seattle. That number is now pushed through 7, is now 7.5 -105. With the 45 there, Scotty. 2 games on Saturday.
Yeah, my data just came in this morning, so I haven't really run it yet. So I don't have a 100% breakdown, but I've done some pre-work on some of this stuff, and one of the things that I thought was important was to understand why the number moved in that Buffalo game, right? So anytime a number moves, you got to try to figure out what it is. Is it weather? Is it injuries? Is it false flags, whatever. So turns out that I believe the number moved because of the report that came out for Buffalo. Buffalo has 3 wide receivers. That's it. Everybody else is hurt. They have 2 guys last week, Shaker and whatever the hell the other guy's name is, the week before, put on IR. Those guys are done. So they have 3 wide receivers. That's all they got. And so everybody's sitting there going, well, these 3 wide receivers, they can't hold up and blah, blah, blah. Well, it's the 3 best wide receivers they have on that team, for God's sakes. And secondary to that, there is, I forget what the guy's name is. I could look it up. But there's a guy that's possibly coming back. They have 2, but there's one of them's a wide receiver who's was practicing yesterday, coming off the IR. And Ed Oliver is another one who's coming off the IR. His window's open. So whether or not they're available to play this weekend, I don't know. That's kind of a questionable thing. But if the wide receiver is able to play, he's actually halfway decent wide receiver. Then I think all of those fears can go away. So matchup wise, though, this is going to be a tough one for Buffalo, and I see this game. I need to see the data. That's what I need to see because here's how I see it. Buffalo's a running team first. They like to run the ball, but here we go. Denver can stop the run, and Denver's got great guys in the secondary, more so than they have on the front line. So, and they can pressure the quarterback. That's the answers Denver has. Well, to be honest, Jacksonville is not much difference than that. Jacksonville was very good in a lot of those spots as well. So So I see that as kind of, yes, maybe Denver's better and they're at home and it's Mile High and blah blah blah. Maybe all of that. And on the other side of it, I see it this way. I don't like Bo Nix of what he's been able to do all season long. They don't have a big running game. They don't have a big passing game. And if you want to exploit what the Bills can't do, is run on them. I mean, Jacksonville ran for 250 some yards in that game against Buffalo. And then it was the turnovers and stuff like that hurt them. What's his name? Trevor Lawrence threw 2 interceptions and stuff. So it's hard to overcome that stuff. And if you really break down the game statistically, Jacksonville outplayed Buffalo. It's just they couldn't beat Josh Allen. That's what happened. Superman comes through and does what he does, and he beat that team or got his team to win the game. So I see this as being a very much similar game. I don't know what to expect in terms of, and that's where I need my data numbers to kind of come together. For everybody who doesn't understand, I look at EPA and I look at matchups and I look at, formations and how teams do and percentages of throwing short passes and long passes and defending and pressure rates and all that kind of stuff. But there's formulas that actually help you when you put that stuff all together. It comes out and it goes, hey, here, run this program. And this program is going to help you with understanding what a score would look like based off of these matchups. And that's how it works. And I think that this is going to be a tough matchup for Buffalo because Buffalo's got these issues at wide receivers. Their wide receivers aren't as good as the defensive backs for Denver. I don't know what it's going to look like when they try to run the ball. They couldn't run the ball on Jacksonville. And then in terms of pass protection, I think Denver might be able to put pressure on the quarterback. And then vice versa, I think Denver is going to struggle with moving the ball against Buffalo. So I guess my thoughts is I can understand why Buffalo is the favorite. I understand the move because we're really worried about the wide receiver group in that regard. And I sit there and go, well, they got 2 good tight ends there in Buffalo with Kincaid and whatever the other guy's name is. The other guy's actually better, but they got 2 guys. Knox, yes. They got 2 guys that can play tight end. They can fulfill a lot of those job roles. So I think, I think they can do some stuff if it's planned out right. I do think Denver's going to be a much more difficult place to play than what Jacksonville was. Although watching that game, I've never seen Jacksonville Stadium be, and I lived in Jacksonville for a little while, and I've been there. I've never seen that stadium as hyped up as it was that day. It was crazy. So and noisy. So I expect Denver to be a much tougher place to play though than Jacksonville. And so I haven't decided how I'm going to play that game. Obviously I haven't run my numbers and have a total number. Tomorrow when we're on the show, I can go, hey, this is what it says and these are the exact numbers. And in the second game, the Seattle game, again, I sit there and I think to myself, what can San Francisco actually do to this Seattle defense? Seattle's seen them twice already, seen them twice last year, but this will be the 3rd time they've played. Seattle, it's not the Rams. This is the 49ers. And they had struggles against the Rams and they had to kind of come back and beat the Rams. The 49ers, they've been dominant over. So I don't know what the 49ers can do. And they've got, obviously, Kittle's not going to be there. And they've got issues on defense. They're playing, the 6th, 7th, and 8th linebackers, for example. And Seattle can almost do whatever they want. So anyway, I haven't really dove into that game. The other game that I have kind of pre-worked a lot on is the Bears game. And the reason I did that was I think the Bears are the most fraudulent team still in the playoffs. They shouldn't be in there already. They should have already been beat by the Packers and whatever. But they're a team that somehow pulled shit out of their ass. And excuse my language, but they did. And the Packers let them win or whatever it is. I don't know what happened. Thoughts are though is that the matchup really. The weather really is going to be an impact in this game. This game is supposed to be, 15, 20 degrees with a lot of 15, 20 mile an hour winds, wind chills below zeros. And Matthew Stafford's just not good in the cold weather. And it's not cold weather. I went and really dove into that. He's actually 3-3 in cold weather games. It's cold weather, wet games. It's when there's moisture, it's snowing and stuff. And it's supposed to be 40% chance of snow and different things there. And he's got that hurt hand, and he already is having trouble in wet weather where the ball slips out of his hand a lot. The truth of the matter is the Rams have a better offensive line. They have a better defensive line. They have better wide receivers. They have a better quarterback. They have a better coach. They have better offensive coordinator. They have better everything. So as long as the data comes through, I'm betting Rams. I don't care. The weather is not going to be something that's going to. It certainly can affect the game, but I don't think it's going to be something that says, well, the Bears are going to win because, it's cold outside. Come on. It's talent and matchups and players that win the games. And if you're going to tell me a guy that's got 46 touchdowns and six interceptions, a guy who's a second-year quarterback is going to match up to that, I think you're full of crap. And then secondly, you're going to say you've got a rookie head coach going against McVay. That's full of crap. And then you start thinking about how all that stuff kind of plays out, especially if they can run the football. If they can run the football, which there's no reason why they can't. Bears can't stop the run. Bears can't stop the pass. The Bears are like ranked somewhere in a 28 range in pass defense. It's like, what can't the Rams do against them? And then you sit there and go, well, Bears have been, moving the football a little bit. They've been lucky as hell is what's been going on. Well, I can't bet on lucky as hell. I have to bet on efficiencies. I have to bet on consistency, and I have to bet on guys that have been there, done that. And that's all Rams. So all this hype and stuff that you're seeing about all this stuff about the Bears, I think is all hype and bullshit. So anyway, that's just my thoughts of stuff that I've done pre-work wise. And now I've got my first set of data things came in this morning, and then I get another set that comes in. But this set's good. And then I have, Jeff, I can talk to you about, and I've already made bets on the college football game. So if you want me to talk about that, I broke it down. I can do all kinds of whatever you want to about the college football game.
We're going to hold off on that for you. We're going to hold off just because we'll use that as a carrot. We're going to break down the two games tomorrow. Plus, you can come back, obviously, San Francisco, Seattle, Buffalo, Denver, once you get the data later today. I do see some money trickling back in on Buffalo. I think it'll be a pick 'em by kickoff. And if you want my true, honest opinion, wouldn't be shocked if Buffalo was -1 by kickoff there. Did see an update. Looks like Texans Nico will not play. They're still unsure if Christian Gonzalez will play for the Pats there. Expecting maybe some wet weather in New England, as New England currently is 3 -20 cents with a 40.5 there against the Texans. It's the early game, and the Rams in Chicago did peak at 4.5, now at a 3.5 with a 49. And what you're saying about the Bears is 1,000% true. There's 7 games this year that they've trailed in the fourth quarter and have come back and won. Last week alone, they scored 25 points in the fourth. It's one of these things that if you let them hang around, then a fumble, a tip ball. Next thing you know, momentum. You talked about crowds and hungry. The Bears crowd was fanaticals. Their first half, it sounded like a morgue, but they still hung around. Third quarter built
Well, it's because
momentum.
they're behind 21-3.
Yeah, and then fourth quarter alone, where the fun began. And most of the NFL games last weekend, there was a lot of score changes in that fourth quarter, which I expect to see again in the Final Four here. And again, Miami, Indiana, Monday night. Yeah, I'll just preface it this way. The look ahead line was Indiana -5.5 against Miami. By halftime of the Indiana Oregon game, they had pushed it to 7.5. They're like, oh no, you guys ain't gonna get us. Well, it ballooned to 8.5 right now at Chris Andrews and the South Point. He's hanging a 9. I was listening to Chris Felica, and he did make a point. I know this Indiana team has been an absolute juggernaut wagon. Signetti just has that stern look, like it's not over till the 60 minutes and the final gun is blown. Some people want to compare this run by the Hoosiers, Heisman Trophy Mendoza, and I'm not comparing Mendoza to Joe Burrow and LSU, but this is how dominant this team has been. But truth be told, like I said last week, Philly and San Fran 3.5 versus Philly, San Fran, and 6. I said it to you out loud on our shows. The number got out of control. That Philly -6 number got out of control. San Fran ends up winning. I'm not playing Monday morning quarterback. What I'm saying right now, at 10:24 on Thursday, January 15th, the Miami Indiana game at 8.5, 9 at the South Point, is out of control, Scott.
Well, I don't want to be the guy that sits here and disagrees with you, but I'm going to disagree.
No, you can disagree. I'm just saying the actual number. Listen.
No, I get it.
It's out of control.
I get it. Here's the biggest, and I'm just going to flat out tell you, I didn't bet. I bet the side on the game, but it's my third best bet. I bet a team total is my number one bet. My number one bet's a team total in this game. And then I bet a first half number as my second best bet. And then I bet a side in this game. So in breaking this game down, the way I see this game is Miami, what's their strength? Their strength is offensive line, defensive line. That's their strength. But of all the teams that they're going to play, Indiana matches up. And not only do they match up, if you want to put Indiana's offensive line and defensive line against the others, they win. Indiana's offensive line is better than the defensive line for Miami, and their defense, the defensive line is much better than the offensive line for Miami. So then tackles for loss, havoc plays, and all that stuff, which Miami's really good at. They're not as good as Indiana is. And Indiana's played a much more difficult schedule than what Miami has. So they're way more tested than what Miami is. All that being said, it's going to come down to this. Miami has to try to run the football. Well, they're not necessarily a good running football team, and EPA-wise, they rank in the 100 category in running the football. Indiana's really good at stopping the run. So this is a team that won't be able to run the ball. So guess what? They're going to throw the ball. And if they're a one-dimensional team in the championship game against a team that can put pass pressure and do off stuff and all that stuff, look, they're not good enough to overcome that. And they are a highly penalized football team. So all of the things that kind of matter to make them competitive in the game, they don't match up. The one thing that they're really good at, and it's because they had a good defense and they have a decent punter, is they're really good at pinning the other team back, and they're good at field position for those kinds of things. But it's not that Indiana's not. It's just that Miami's the number one team in the whole country at that. But that's the difference in the game. And then I sit there and go, all right, well, can Indiana run the ball? Yep, they can run the ball. Can they throw the ball? Yep, they can throw the ball. What about the quarterback? Well, quarterback made all the throws the last game. The quarterback's made all the throws all year long. And then they sit here and you hear all these pundits go, well, he shouldn't be the number one draft pick. I don't care. I want him to be able to throw that 15-yard out and just zip it in there. And he does that. So I think where you run into some issues, and I get it, we're talking about a betting line, not necessarily playing out the game, and kind of how all that looks. I will. Here's what I will tell you. The one betting line that I thought was a one-way ticket was the Rams game. I thought the Rams listed at 4.5 as an opener was, we don't want money on the Rams. We want money on the Bears. And that's the only way you can bet that game. It's the only way. It's the only way you can bet that game. Well, now it's got to be 3.5. My opinion, thinking that through, and then hopefully the data matches, which I think it will, I think the Rams win by 10. So I think that's a setup game. I don't think this one is in that regard. My initial thought was, well, let's put it out 5.5. Well, power. Look, I see Kenny White's power numbers. I see these, and the models don't have power numbers. The models aren't really power numbers. They're running algorithms and different things and stuff. And if I told you, where is this? So the FEI projection. So FEI is it's a BCS kind of thing, whatever. It's a model. Well, the model is 29-16. That's the score of this football game. Indiana 29-16. Sagrin's score 31-19, 12 points. My AI is 12 points. I don't think 8.5 is high enough. I don't think 9 is high enough. I don't think 9.5 is high enough, but I'm not a sports book. So setting the line and doing the different things, and I get all of that stuff, and I get all of those things. And I'm not telling you Indiana is like this super major team, because my another opinion I have would be is if you played Indiana against that LSU team, LSU is going to win them, and LSU is going to beat that team against Indiana by 7 points. So I think I think Indiana is just in a spot where they're going to play a team that theoretically, I shouldn't say theoretically, they're not the number 2 team, 3 team, 4 team, 5 team in the country. They're lower than that. They've won and got to where they are. They've earned those things. But you've got some mismatches here that are pretty large, and it is what it is. You're going to have decent weather. Decent weather. It's going to be I don't know, whatever it is. It's going to be cold here this weekend, but it's not going to be cold that weekend. Thoughts on my side are, it's going to be a one-dimensional game. Miami can't win a one-dimensional game, and Indiana wears them down and beats the crap out of them, and puts the pressure on them, and they pop. And Miami just goes pow, and Carson Beck starts turning the ball over. They can't run the ball. They can't stop anything, and then it becomes a nightmare.
No, and again, my only point is, again, the number has spiraled out of control, and the books, what they're trying to do is, they're trying to control it. So Chris Andrews, good friend of mine at the South Point, has hung a 9. Why did he hang a 9? He's trying to find what the number is to get some Miami money here. That's all. And like the Rams and Bears, Scotty, what's the great equalizer in that one? It's the weather. And then everyone sees Stafford's numbers in the cold. Okay? Well, this Miami team, the A&M game, coin flip came down to the last play. I get it. I don't think Miami's getting enough respect on how they I'm not going to use the word manhandled, but how they beat Ohio State. And I know Indiana beat Ohio State, but they dominated Ohio State. Okay. And then the Ole Miss game, Miami was in control much of that. And then a great fourth quarter by Ole Miss. And again, it came down to, potentially the last throw. This game here, there are some factors here. It is technically a Miami home game. It's 20 minutes from campus. Okay? And if you go back into past history, I use the Orange Bowl, of course, but now it's Hard Rock. Okay? But my point is, Miami in this position in past history, going way back to the days of Jimmy Johnson, Schnellenbach, and a bunch of other coaches, have not only won this game, they've won it as a dog. So I'm not here back in Miami. Don't get me wrong. I am not here back in Miami because this Indiana team is special. It does resemble the LSU and Joe Burrow team. And they have just steamrolled these teams. They step on your neck, and I like your analogy of the explosion. Because if it's a tight first quarter, Miami makes a little mistake and they're trailing by 3, 7, or 10 in the halftime, well, that third quarter, that first drive becomes, hey, we got to score here. Another turnover or a 3-and-out. Here comes Mendoza and Signetti. Next thing you know, it's 14. And just ask Alabama how the explosion can happen.
Well, that's what I think. I look at this and go, just logically, how is Miami going to move the football? I don't know the answer to that question. They're going to try to run, but they're going to get stopped. They're going to have pressure on the quarterback. They're going to try to get that little number 10, Malachi Tony, the ball and stuff, and they can cover him. Don't forget that the linebackers, and we made this comment, or I made this comment after watching them play the other day. The linebackers for Indiana are better than any other team. They can stop the run and they can cover the pass. And most of the time, you got to take your linebackers out to put extra defensive backs in to cover players and do different things as it goes on. But they're going to have tackles for loss. They're going to have sacks. They're going to have pressure. And what does that do to Miami? That creates false starts. That's holding penalties and, in theory, turnovers. And you know what? Hey, Profit Margin, good morning. And you know what? When you really think about, kind of how this game goes, they can't run the ball. They're going to be in a one-dimensional world, and I just don't think they survive. What are they going to do? Try to throw screen passes? Okay, try to throw screen passes. See where that goes. I just think that as the game goes on, I think Indiana's going to try to start fast and put the pressure on them early. And as that goes, that just creates more and more and more and more pressure. And, it's a pressure cooker for Miami, and I don't know how they get out of it. Turnovers and stuff. Yeah. But, I don't know how that's always going to play out. Indiana's the second best, third best turnover team in the entire country. And the reason they are is because of all the pressure and all the different things they do and stop you and all that stuff. I'm not saying they're not invincible. Teams score 20 points on them and stuff. I think it goes from there. He says, how does Indiana not win this game and my Raiders not end up drafting Mendoza? Well, Mendoza doesn't have a number one. Let's put it this way. If you talk to the pundits, and I'm not a pundit, I'm not going to go through the draft analysis, and I'll be a bad person for that. I'm not going to bet the draft. I don't do that stuff. Jeff might have other guests that can do that, but I'm not that guy. Anyway, if you listen to them, they're going to tell you that the kid from Oregon has a better number one overall pick draft grade than Mendoza does. I get it. He's 17, right? He's real young, and he's got all the different accolades that a professional football team looks for. I watch these guys play. I think Mendoza's pretty good. I don't mind him on the Raiders, to be honest. I mean, the Raiders don't have anybody else to run and be a quarterback. And then you do different things. I don't know how he sets up. mental makeup, I think, is really important. And when you talk about Mendoza, Mendoza is a guy I've heard on the interview circuit and all that stuff. And you know, I'm going to be as honest as I can. It sounds like a mama's boy. I don't think NFL teams want quarterbacks that are mama's boys. I think they want the Tom Brady badass guys that go out there and lead their guys and lead men. You know, I mean, if you're Mendoza and you're, I don't know how old he is, but you know, just coming out of college and you got to go be the leader of a team with guys that are 35 years old or 32 years old or whatever in their prime, and they're just animal monster guys. I don't think they're going to listen to this kid. He's a mama's boy. Anyway, all that being said, does he have the talent? In my world, he has the talent. I don't know. That's a Tom Brady decision as far as I'm concerned. You know, and granted, look, when I was a kid, and I see there's not many people in the world that sit here and go, "Hey, rate my Raiders." Look, I was a Raiders kid when I was a kid. Man, I had everything Raiders. I love the Raiders. The best thing I can remember about memories about Kenny Stabler and Mark Van Egan and Marcus Allen and the Otis Sistrunks and, you know, Howie Longs, and man, it was the greatest. It was one of the greatest times of my life. He said the Raiders could use a mama's boy at this point. Maybe so.
You're forgetting Mr. Jim Plunkett, of course. Listen, I have a lot of memories. The Raiders, the 4 o'clock games, the John Maddens, like I said, Jim Plunkett, Cliff Branch, you know, and brings back the good old days. I used to love
that. Makes me smile listening to that. You know.
Dante Moore decides to go back to Oregon, and Todd McShay. I'll close with this one. Todd McShay was asked earlier this week, and he didn't even think about it. He says if Archie Manning was coming out this year, he would be the number one quarterback. He would be the number one pick. And again, people will roll their eyes. He did play a lot better down the stretch. But again, it's tough to look at the pedigree of the Mannings and the success of Dad and the success of Peyton and the success of Eli. And then you have that decision to make, Arch Manning or Mendoza. I kind of used a Michael Jordan, Sam Bowie, where you could get big egg on your faces. Hey, I'm taking the safer move here in Mendoza, and Arch Manning then becomes that guy. But we got a lot to go there. I want to give a big shout out to Profit Margin 7497. Thank you so much for all the love and support. PB, of course, Mr. Lucky, Dr. Lance, etc., etc., etc. Manning has the lineage, of course, but if his name was Joe Blow, how would everyone feel? No, you're spot on. You're spot on. And again, the money's the number one pick, the guaranteed money. And again, you want the face. You want the face of your franchise, which desperately your Raiders are looking for. Tried to use Pete Carroll and Geno Smith as a stopgap, and obviously it didn't work. You have some pieces. You have Ashton Genty. You have Brock Bowers. Now you need someone to feed him the ball. And then I'm just going to say this out loud. Your best move in this offseason would be to pull the plug and take the heart and soul of Max Crosby, send him to greener pastures, someone that thinks they're one defensive player away, stockpile as many draft picks as you can, and then feed that system as well. Nick Hatcoat, in 19 minutes, we'll be back breaking down some Indiana, Miami. Myself and Scott will be back tomorrow morning around 9:15, 9:30. From myself, Jeff Dawson at EC Sports Investor, the one and only Mr. Scotty Webb at Webby20MLB. We wish everyone a blessed morning. Go grab that coffee and bagel, and I'll see you back here in about 19 minutes. Stay tuned.